So I've always been active. I went to Mississippi State right after I graduated high school, and it was there where I realized that I just kind of wanted to find myself. I didn't want to be in that box of, well, Angie's always the one who will take care of things. I was following a big sister there. Just wanted to kind of escape because I wasn't sure who I was, because I felt I was being pushed into an identity that I didn't know that I wanted. So I actually went to Georgia State University and went to really find myself in a way that I had not had the opportunity to do in Mississippi. I was the only Black person in my class for the better part of 12 years. So I actually became very involved, helped start a chapter of the NAACP at Georgia State University. My major was political science with a minor in women's studies. That's why I'm so passionate about what you do, because it's a wonderful platform. And so I helped start a national organization for women there as well. My life looked very different when I was there. I was part of the working poor, worked 2 or 3 jobs, had an infant son, and was working to get a degree. So I understood the power of networking, because to me, it's not who you know, it's who knows you. So I had the opportunity to come back home after 10 years and lived in Hattiesburg for a little while. I did have a choice of whether or not I wanted to come back to Mississippi, and I did. And I had some elderly parents here. But also, I love Mississippi. Mississippi's been good to me. I know a lot of people outside the area don't understand that, and they ask if you had a choice, why did you go back? I think you can make your way wherever you are. So there's people who are very lonely in very large cities, and I feel like I have a good network here. So I was able to apply for a position at a local broadcast station as an account executive to sell advertising. I didn't really even know what that was or what that entailed. And I was blessed that the person on the other side of the line that answered the phone, who was hiring, was a boss that's been my mentor for years now. And, I was stumbling through the interview when they were asking technically specific questions about broadcast sales. And he said, listen, don't worry. I've already looked at your resume. I see that you were in retail sales for many years. I was in store manager for a national retail chain. That's where I was coming from. And he said, just identify what you do well, and those will transfer into your new job, and I can teach you the rest. And I have lived by that for the rest of my life.
Wow.
Identified that I was well organized, well spoken, that I was self-motivated. And so those have become my mantras in my elevator speech about myself, that have helped me get past the fear of making a transition into a new career. So I went to broadcast sales for about 10 years, and then I went from there. One of my clients recruited me to work at their hospital. Again, I was fearful because I'd never done healthcare marketing, but I knew that I could take those transferable skills there and did well. And just have recently moved to another healthcare system within the last year. Again, moving past the fear of transition, knowing that I've made my way when I've just jumped. And this has been one of the best moves that I could have ever made for my career. And just for the stability, I have a wonderful boss and a lot of people, a great team around me. And I would have never been able to experience that had I not moved.
Wow, I had another question, but I want to talk about what you just said, because I think right now, I think for me and I think for many, specifically, I'm hoping for us as women, because a lot of our work and dialogue is around women. But you talked about your skill set, knowing what you do best and incorporating that in your work and making it work for you. I think that's one of the things I'm hoping that we as women take away from this particular pandemic or shutdown, where we've had this opportunity to reevaluate our lives and what we do. I'm hoping for many of us, we are determined that we're not in places where we want to be, that we're at a place in our lives where we want to have real joy in our lives and what we do, because we spend a lot of times with the work that we do. And we want to make sure that what we do and the work that we do is impactful. So you touched on it very, very clearly, and I think for many of us who have been laid off from their job or haven't been at work, I think the next step is going to be a fear for a lot of us, because we're going to have to move into new territory for ourselves. That space that we were in before, it either does not exist or will not come back in a while. So what do you say to women out there regarding that? How do they move forward in setting a new place for themselves and a new path?
Well, I think the first step would be to identify what they had to offer. I think that sometimes we don't look outside the box. That, for example, if you have been an executive administrator, that we stick with the administrative piece of it. But then if you drill down to someone who does that role, they have been involved in payroll, a piece of HR. They have been involved in maybe building sponsorships. So I've actually recently had the opportunity to work with someone where we changed even the resume into buckets of leadership, of communication, of community outreach, rather than looking at the technical pieces of it, because sometimes that doesn't tell the whole story. Mm-hmm. So I think also organizing the way in which someone expresses themselves and is able to communicate their skill set is one. And then also looking outside the box in terms of what they can do with their future. Moving past the fear, getting some counseling in terms of asking and interviewing people who are in other jobs or the jobs that you hope to get, and asking, can I do this? And then interviewing them and getting some idea of what they need to communicate to employers when they're seeking new jobs. Maybe they need to brush up on a skill set, whether it's taking an online class, one of the shorter ones, whether it's QuickBooks or Excel, so they can add that to their resume if they have the fear that they're not qualified. But what I've also found is that oftentimes, and I've heard this from many resources, that women have a tendency to short sell themselves. Mm-hmm. So, for example, if there are 5 qualifications on a resume, in an employee posting, women will say, well, I don't have all 5. Mm-hmm. I have maybe 2. Mm-hmm. So I'll just wait and try to get the other 3. Whereas sometimes men they won't even have the 1, right, and they'll apply. And it's because they move past that fear and we're more aggressive, that they get the jobs. So what I say is apply for what you feel like is going to make you happy. Just let them tell you no. Yeah. But don't tell yourself no and talk yourself out of it before you even try. That's
wonderful, wonderful advice. Very practical advice that we can all put in place right now. So now let's talk about some of the work that you're doing, okay? I want to jump right into the Legacy Business League, because I love this last sentence of the mission statement, which says that this particular work was fueled by the sacrifices made by past generations and to create a legacy for generations to come. Wow. So Tell us about the Legacy Business League. What was the catalyst for this particular organization's founding?
Well, the catalyst was the fact that I was still the only Black person in the room a lot of times, whether it was being a volunteer at a local museum or being on the board of an area business organization. As I'm looking around the room, there weren't a lot of people that looked like me. And I would go to the organizers and talk about diversity outreach, which most, if not all, were open to, but didn't have a means by which to do that. I was actually the president of an area chamber when it started, because I would go to these networking events. I would hear about wonderful business grants. I would hear about professional development programs that I knew that our people needed, but nobody was there to hear it. And then I would invite folks, and then we have a tendency to also cluster ourselves. If there's a room full of 100 people and there's tables, we're at the table with ourselves. And so I would mentor and say, let's get up, let's go network, because these are the people in the room can help you. Mm-hmm. So it really stemmed out of that need and started a diversity council within that with that chamber organization. Then I became president of the umbrella organization about 5 years later. And I knew I was in a key position to possibly start a diversity arm of that particular chamber. And so we started the networking lunches it sounds like you've done. And they, to your point, they were wonderful. It didn't matter how many people of color, minorities that I invited to this main chamber organization. People just still didn't feel comfortable. They just didn't feel like there was commonality. Again, sometimes it's something that we're doing to ourselves, but then also there is a real barrier in being welcomed into an environment for which we're not familiar. So when we started the lunches, one day just started it, had 111 people.
Wow.
In 3 weeks. We said, okay, we're going to do this. 111 people of color showed up. And it was amazing. The energy in the room was palpable. And so we kept strong for about a year, tapered off a little bit because we all have jobs. It wasn't a formal organization. And that was in 2013. So intermittently we've had some other networking and outreach events. But in the last year, we changed the name from the Legacy Group to the Legacy Business League and have expanded our scope of work. And so that I'm called co-founder because my partner in crime, Kiva Scott, she's the CEO of a youth organization on the coast. She had a similar organization where she lived, and so we merged them and broaden it to direct services for businesses. So if you wanted to start up, there's business plan opportunities. If you have just wanted to grow it, you've been in business and you needed a little bit more technical support, such as marketing strategies or access to capital and such, we have wraparound services and mentors that are ready and available to help with that. The national narrative that has occurred over the last actually a couple of weeks, what we know has been going on for centuries in terms of race relations between the police and or race relations in Mississippi in general. It's kind of narrowed our focus over the last several weeks toward advocacy. Of course, we had to make some modifications when COVID hit in terms of not having the networking events, and so we expanded a virtual platform, which has been just wonderful, having influencers on. Tomorrow we're having Representative Sonia Williams-Barnes, who's going to give us a legislative update.
A member of our organization, by the way, member of Women for Progress. Isn't that something?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We love her. She's wonderful. Yeah.
So I believe in what you're doing and why you're doing it. So there's going to be a youth component as well, and that we make sure that we are creating a pipeline for youth to learn about entrepreneurship and to really help them overcome the challenges that we know people of color, minorities, women face. So they understand what to expect and how to succeed, in addition to a Youth for Unity project, which is going to allow them to express themselves and their voices so they can be heard as well as we talk about social injustice. As you know, there's been several marches on the coast lately. And one of the principles that, we help organize and we help participate, but what happens after the march? So we have an After the March project, which consists of numerous listening sessions of a mixed room. We're making sure that it's balanced in terms of what we look like on the outside. Black men, white men, so on and so forth, and interjected with some police officers. That will also be coming. We have a joint effort with the chief of police in Gulfport. So starting the conversation as to how we can evoke change, and then putting some actionable, measurable steps in place. So when we look back, we can say this is what was for nothing. I want to touch on where the name Legacy came from. My father was Gilbert Mason, who was Dr. Gilbert R. Mason Sr. That was how we like to say his name. He led the wade-in efforts on the Mississippi Gulf Coast, Biloxi specifically. And so my mother was extremely active and still is. She's 85 years old. She works the polls. Picks up boxes, works the precincts.
Wow.
Huge advocate for voter registration, as she has been my entire life. So I obviously had models growing up, and I just felt like the name reflected what they put before us. So what was it for if in the event we don't take advantage of what they put in place? So he was literally hit over the head, with billy clubs, shots into his doctor's office, a cat head hung on his fence,
Wow.
as a warning to him that he was on a KKK list for execution. Mm-hmm. So those type of things were happening in his lifetime and my mother's lifetime. But then we may not have those explicit things happening to us, but we do have the implicit things mm-hmm. happening where we're not promoted, or I still have to train my son to put, his hands on the steering wheel when mm-hmm. he's pulled over by a police officer. So there are still things that we have to be cognizant of, and obviously the last several weeks have been evidence of that. And legacy is our responsibility to leave that, to take advantage of what the legacy they left us, and then for us to create one for our children.
Well, that's phenomenal. And I think one of the things when you talked about when you started the lunches and people of color who came in groves to be there, I think one of the things that's probably similar to what our Lunch and Learn does is, of course, it brings all of us, lots of women of color to the table, but we have a diverse group of organization. We have white and brown women that are part of this organization too. But I think what was successful for us with our Lunch and Learn was it gave us that space to where we could talk in our own language about the issues that we felt passionate about, whether it was to inspire each other, to share our mother stories and our own stories, to be able to connect with ourselves in all that we are. And I think a lot of times, I think people need to look at all types of networking opportunities, because you want to take advantage of all the opportunities that are out there. But you have to have that space also that really speaks to you and your soul and who you are, and that you can feel very comfortable coming and being part of. And so I think that's what made our Lunch and Learn successful. Like I said, we have a diverse audience that comes and being part of the conversation, but it is a powerful, loving environment, and we're always excited about it. So I'm so glad that you have this going on the Gulf Coast. My goodness, I started this conversation and I'm only a few minutes in, and I'm already blown away. So I want to shift a little bit and talk about the business aspect, because many of us that are I think for months now, we've all been just trying to survive. We've trying to keep the roof from falling in, make sure our kids are fed, the mortgage payments gets paid, and just kind of working it through. But now I think if those of us who are listening and you have not moved to this stage, it's time to do so. We got to start thriving again. We've been surviving. Now we got to start thriving, and we're going to need each other's help to make sure that happens. So I want to talk about, because you work with a lot of diverse businesses on the Gulf Coast, and what you think the biggest impact of COVID-19 has been to small businesses in the state of Mississippi, and what is it going to take? What are one or two things that it's going to take for us to really focus on to get back to thriving again?
I think that one cannot go back to business as usual, obviously, because the pandemic and the economic situation has dictated that. But I think that it is an opportunity for one to look at their organizational structure, look at their team dynamics, look at what the customer is looking for and asking for now. That may have changed. And I am regurgitating something from one of our speakers that said this. Who is over Pivot Global Consulting, and because we had something about how to pivot, and those are really the top dynamic things that I heard from her, and that I'm hearing from some of those businesses that have been able to shift. So I think going back into business as if it was business as usual may be a mistake for some that were already on the cusp of whether or not they're going to be successful and just maintain or thrive. So new service lines may have come out of the pandemic. Is there, of course, some clothing stores, they stopped making one thing, but then began to make masks. I was in even, it's a larger corporation, but I was in Steinmart the other day, and they have a whole rack of masks and gloves and, decorative ones where people want to match it with their clothes. A young lady here locally did the same thing, where she has head wraps and masks that match with shoes that match the mask. So when you get inventive like that, but not everybody, can do that. Restaurants, the takeout services, they're still even when they opened up, don't stop your curbside and don't stop promoting your pickup, because not everybody is comfortable still being in that environment. So the biggest thing that I would think of is to make sure that you're staying on track and in tune with what is actually happening in today's in climate and environment. Because if you can try to continue to do the same thing the same way, I think you might miss an opportunity. And the only other thing that I would say is that I am concerned about many of the businesses taking advantage of some of these loans, and with not really understanding the dynamics, because most of these things have to be paid back. So if there are any grant opportunities that people can tap into, or that they make sure that they understand the loan terms, because sometimes you get yourself in a bind. I know that with that's happened before when we've been in a recession, that we've never seen anything like this before. And there have been a lot of programs that have popped up, but just to make sure that is truly to your benefit, and that you may need it right now, this very moment, to survive, but just being careful before entering into those type of agreements, so you're not getting yourself into a situation.
And I think in my inbox all the time, I'm getting all of these emails from predatory lenders who have these huge interest rates and says, hey, let us get you this easy money. We can get it to you in 24 to 48 hours to get and start up your business. And so just be careful. And I want to say to people too is sometimes, as you stated early, is maybe a time to make a shift. Sometimes that model, even when it looks good, may not be the fit at this particular time, and we have to make a shift to do something different, and then come back to that if that's something that's your passion. And I want to say to people, and I think we don't say this enough to each other, that's okay. Change is okay. And you have to make the best decision for you. Don't worry about the business down the street. Don't worry about what other people tell you that you have to do. You have to seek good information now. You got to get good information. You got to be able to sit with people, talk with people, look at your plan, look at the good, the bad, the ugly of it. And then you have to come to a decision. And do not hesitate. Don't let fear hold you back. Because this is a time, I think one of the things that, this is in my mind, is that I think one of the things that this pandemic provides to us right here in this moment is a time to say, it's okay. It's okay to do something different. It's okay to make a shift, to make the 90-degree turn if that's what you want to do. It is okay for you to do that, but do it in small steps. Don't get overwhelmed by it. Like I said, make sure that you get the information and you talk to the right people so that you can make the best decision. And I think the biggest thing that we can do for each other, help each other plan. And that's not always easy, because sometimes in the midst of our everyday, we're trying to get the work done and do what we need to do. That it's hard sometimes just to sit and to think about it. Think about what's the best step.
That is so true. We get too busy and in the minutia of things, and we don't take time to create strategies. And one of the best advice that I've gotten over the last couple of weeks, and I don't own a small business. I work for a larger company, but I still could take that same advice, and that I can't go back to doing the things the way that we were doing prior to this pandemic. One of the if there's anything positive that can come out of something in my work environment, people kicked in a way that I had not seen that type of performance prior to. So then I realized that they had the ability that I was underestimating. So another piece of advice is that not micromanage but overmanage. So if you We're having staff meetings once a week, do it twice a week. If you are checking in with people on Mondays, make sure you're checking in with them on Fridays, making sure they have what they need. Are they safe? Do they feel comfortable? And then I took a step back to even rework their job descriptions, to streamline them and enhance them, and then talk to them about the expectations. Like, remember how you kicked it in for those, 4 to 5 weeks, because we knew exactly what we were doing. We were working, 14-hour days, walking in, you go get this signage, you go get this, and, you go with the media. And then when it started to taper off, we just kind of went into our corners and started doing that busy work again. And I said, no, and we were a high functioning team then, and we're going to maintain that same type of speed and direction going forward. And everybody was all in. They were happy to hear that message. And now we're having, more brainstorming time to say, where do we go from here? And I appreciate that experience happened, because I think we might have still just been kind of trugging along, same old, when this is a transformative time, and everything that we're doing now is very intentional.
And you talked a lot about this, but I'm going to ask this questions anyway, is what are some of the opportunities you think businesses right now are leaving on the table? Because everybody's rushing, of course, for the federal dollars and the stimulus money and all those kind of things. What are the things that we as business owners are leaving on the table, or even entrepreneurs, that we're not really taking advantage of?
I think finding partners, new partners that may need your services. Right. Perhaps a lot of times we work in our silos, and we don't expand our footprint. With the use of virtual tools. I mean, who was going to use Zoom prior to this? I mean, you and I, we would have never met. Right. We met, through a colleague who I interviewed via Zoom, who I would have never interviewed if I was still doing my networking lunches. She would have never come down for Jackson for the day to do that. And so we've stood up and expanded beyond boundaries in a way that we would have never imagined and would not have done had not been squeezed into doing it and capitalizing on the opportunity. So I think that businesses, even though they may geographically be restricted to one real estate, a rooftop, they can still begin to understand, how they can reach out. So, for example, I had a friend who owns a restaurant, and instead of just, promoting via social media, she had curbside, she contacted, the marketing directors of each of the hospitals and some of the larger industries and said, hey, let me bring food to you. I know that you can't get away. Tell us when you want it delivered. These are your choice menu items, and boom, there you have it. That's a whole new revenue stream. That doesn't stop. Yeah. Even though people are still starting to eat in the restaurant. And she may be located in Biloxi, but she can, go within a small radius so that the food is still high. And so that thinking beyond the walls doesn't stop within this finite period of time. COVID-19 is not over by any stretch of the imagination. And being in the healthcare industry, I would be remiss in not saying that, and that we're seeing an uptick in positives. And it's a direct correlation to the Memorial Day weekend, when just before that happened, the safer at home restrictions were lifted, and it was a return to business, but it's not back to business by any stretch of the imagination. So people really do need to continue to be diligent about wearing the mask, washing your hands, and staying away from large crowds. So the businesses don't want to hear that, bless their hearts. I know that they want people to come into the room, but are there more e-commerce opportunities? Have you stood up a showroom, a virtual showroom, in which nowadays that is just too easy to do? The last commercial that I made for Memorial, both were taped on my iPhone. Because I didn't want a videographer to go onto the floor, even though we're one of the safest places you can be because of the precautions that we take. We still weren't allowing vendors and visitors. I shot it on my iPhone, and so nowadays it's too easy for merchants to showcase their goods and services,
right.
and then to be able to use the technology to outreach to a new audience.
Yeah, that's very, very good information. And then I want to talk about you mentioned about your co-founder and how you merged your efforts together for the Legacy Business League. And I believe, and we're a true believer, I mean, our organization, Women for Progress, was founded over 42 years ago. And one of the founding principles was this idea of women working together, women linking together to empower each other. So how do you feel, and that's always a question that I always ask, I don't care if I'm on a panel or if I'm hosting a panel or whatever, how can we as women work more effectively together? Because we know even as us as women of color, we come with a little bit of baggage from our history. So it's challenges, trust issues, those kind of things. But I'm a believer in moving forward, is to not give ourselves a hard time for how we have reacted with each other in the past, but how can we move forward more effectively? So what would you say that what has worked for you and your co-founder in working together?
It's so interesting that you say that. I really wish she was here, because she would tell you that listening. I fall into the category of being an alpha female,
yeah.
Which I sometimes I think is derogatory, but if you had to put it down in a personality assessment, I am. Mm-hmm. And she has a dominant personality as well. And so there definitely are trust issues, and most of it falls with me in terms of being able to listen to an idea and just being able to trust that somebody else can execute it and it doesn't have to be done my way. Mm-hmm. I've struggled with that for the majority part of my leadership years. But having to lead a team recently, I realized that I do have to take a step back. I think what would work better, let me just say that, is if I would relinquish some control and allow people to express themselves and implement their ideas where they feel safe and have a little bit more freedom to do so. I don't feel like it's a competition in terms of female versus female. I think I tried to overcome a lot of that even in college, because I had full courses about the dynamics between women and how much of it was dictated by the male philosophy, mm-hmm. and how we've been conditioned to think about each other. Mm-hmm. And certainly there are some examples of us not being trustworthy within our own culture. I don't feel that that's what that is. I feel that it's just my personality and needing to feel in control, single woman, single mother, having to do a lot. And when I have given up some of that in times past, it just hadn't gone the way I wanted it to. Mm-hmm. So then I think I've conditioned myself to hold on and hang on, but that has not been beneficial. Mm-hmm. I think if this organization actually would have been further along had it not taken someone like Cuba to see the vision. And because I was hanging on so tight after doing it, in 2013, it would have, where are we, 2020? Mm-hmm. It could have been much further along. But now we're rocking and rolling because she has a passion that is unrivaled. For diversity and inclusion, for business development, and you just really gotta have to hang on, when she's around, and pushing on these initiatives. So I say trust, listen actively, and relinquish some of it, because you don't know what can come out of that relationship if you're always giving your ideas, and I'm still working on it.
Hey, I'm part of that support group also, but I think also you said, I'm so glad you said that it's not just about us and who we are, but it's also for those of us who have that personality, is that it's a comfort zone for us too. It's a secure place when we feel that. Because we want excellence, and there's nothing wrong with that. We always want success. We never want failure, and so but it's a process. I think if you think you're going to change your mindset overnight on how you think about those things, that's not going to happen. And
and the irony of it is that, in my trying to hold on to control so I could be successful, I'm failing.
Yeah.
I mean, who says that my idea is the right one? Who says that, holding on to that is the right thing to do? And oftentimes it's not.
Yeah.
And if I could think back at the circumstances where when you did just let go and let God,
yeah.
Things worked out.
Yeah. Things
always really do work out and they flourish. So that's what I would say, is that I understand why it happens. I understand why I do it. But we've got to recondition ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm so glad you shared that and you gave it such good perspective. And all the women that are listening today, I hope this conversation is really impacting you as it is impacting me. I'm making tons of notes. As a matter of fact, I hope I was not hosting and I could take more notes during our conversation.
I'm doing the same thing. I'm just going to steal some of your speakers, by the way.
This has been a wonderful, wonderful conversation. Now, I think one of my biggest wish for people, and specifically for us as women, is to help each other expand our capacity, because our capacity to empower ourselves and empower our families and others is so much more than what we're even doing. Even those who we look at and we say, oh my gosh, she's doing this, she's doing that. She even has the capacity to do more. Maybe not in her own hands, but her capacity to be able to help and empower somebody else do the work that she feels passionate about. So as we move forward, I'm so excited. This, and I don't even want to share my own challenges during this pandemic. I have had a sick husband, and I don't even want to go into other issues. But through it all, I have been so joyful. I even get a little emotional now. I have been so excited because I know that there are really wonderful things that we're going to see moving forward. We're already seeing our culture change. We are seeing people embrace each other in such different ways. And we hear all the time that our time has come. All of our times have come. And I hope we just take advantage of every single thing that's out there for us. And we'll get beyond this valley that we're in. And so we just need to, don't be fearful. I want to say that to people all the time. And that's a challenge for us every day, because we wake up with many of us having a list of things that we got to get done. And they're important things, not just things that we got to check off. They're survival things. And sometimes that can be very fearful. And I want to say to people that it's okay. It's okay. If you get up and you wake up and you move forward and you walk out that door every morning, you are doing milestones, okay? And facing the day and facing all the opportunities that you have out there. Now, we talked about we have just a few minutes left, but I want to hit a little bit on Memorial Health. And tell us about Memorial Health and what do you all do? What is it? What is the activities there?
Oh, we are a large healthcare system on the Mississippi Gulf Coast and actually have expanded to more than 6 counties. Mm-hmm. We acquired an additional hospital in Stone County in Wiggins and have literally transformed that organization overnight. We had to get ready for the Joint Commission, which is the accrediting body for our organization and for healthcare industry across the country. Within a couple of months for that particular hospital, and passed with flying colors. And even the surveyor said that was something that really hardly ever happens, to go from one owner to another and do the things, implement the policies and guidelines that are necessary to pass a high level accreditation like that are amazing. We have doctors in specialties in many areas: cardiovascular, gastroenterology, orthopedics, the large variety in varied advanced care specialties on the coast. And we have more than 100 physician clinics in Hancock County, Harrison County, Jackson County, and so the philosophy is bringing access to those who need it the most. We've stood it up in areas where we've increased the number of doctors and or nurse practitioners, so people either don't have to travel to be within our network, and or where there weren't that many to begin with. Cardiovascular program is really one of the things that we're known for here. We have a neurologist where many hospitals don't have them, so we have a strong stroke program, and a robust ER, which is a level 2. So that means a lot of the area hospitals have to transfer the higher level of care cases to us. COVID-19, I think that we've handled it the best way anyone could, and we have had many of the media outlets and doctors even accredit us for helping to keep the cases of COVID-19 low in Harrison County because of how quickly we reacted to it. We designated 7 of our clinics, and then eventually it was 7 of our clinics that were COVID-19 testing sites specifically.
Wow.
Meaning that even well people could not go there. If you had a cut on your hand, you needed to go to the other clinic that we had. But there were designated people in full PPEs, stayed in their car. Just some of the processes that we stood up. We were asked by some legislators because we're city and county owned. And we were asked at one point to go and do pop-up clinics. So we were able to bring our mobile RV, which is a designated clinic, to remote areas. So people who had transportation issues, or again that feeling of security, didn't want to go to a clinic, even though it was designated to where you stay in the car. We brought the clinic, to them. And had great success with that as well. So one of the reasons I said earlier that this has been such a great move for me is that I've worked for a for-profit and not-for-profit, and in the for-profit world they were wonderful individuals as well. But when your mission is every day that is what you're here for, mm-hmm. is to make sure that there is quality access to healthcare. It changes your motivation as it is to be, success looks a different way. So bringing that RV into those communities, that was success, and to making sure that we were doing what it took to decrease the number of people that were affected and help to minimize the spread of infection, especially when there was a disproportionate number of African Americans mm-hmm. that were susceptible to it because of the comorbidities, the hypertension, diabetes, and such. And of course, there's a rich history as to why that happens as well, and some things in our culture. So happy to work here, and I think that people really respect the Memorial brand and look to us for guidance in many ways.
Well, you're definitely doing innovative things as around healthcare, and we're excited to know that this particular entity exists in the state of Mississippi. So I want, with our couple of minutes that we have left, is for you to share a couple of websites for Memorial Health, and because I think others of us in the other parts of the state, we would love to have examples of the type of work that you all are doing through Memorial Health, and especially what you're doing to impact communities, and specifically communities of color. So please give that website so we can look and we can share that with our folk. And then, of course, the Legacy Business League, we want you to... Now, I saw something. Is there a membership that individual?
Yes, it's actually... Legacy Business League is a minority chamber of commerce.
Okay.
The business, if you look up the origin of that, really came from Booker T. Washington, and it preceded the chamber name. So we went back to the origins. So the legacybusinessleague.org or imlegacy.org is where you can find out information there, and you can email us if you want more information, but there's also a membership opportunity. We changed our moniker in the middle of the pandemic to wearememorial.com because that is what we're not just clinics, we're not just hospitals, we're not just diagnostic centers, not just nursing homes. We have nursing homes. Only one positive employee out of 350 beds this entire time.
Wow.
I mean, you have to be pretty amazing. You have to have some.
Yeah. You got to have a mindset. And look, I'm going to bring you back for a conversation just around nursing homes because I'm not even going to start on that. because
I got somebody for you. I got somebody for you.
It takes a mindset for that, and people talk a lot about people, well, they have to stay within a budget, and oh, there's challenges here. No. All those things exist in any business, but it has to do when you're caring for the most vulnerable population. Yes. You have got to have the right mindset from a management level. And then once you have that from a management level, yes, it's going to trickle down to the people who are mopping the floor and wiping down the beds, every single thing. And let me tell you, those folks who's mopping the floors and wiping down the beds, look, I have a loved one in a nursing home. To me, when you walk in a room and you see your loved one in a clean environment, oh my goodness, it empowers you better than anything else, than those nurses coming through in the little pretty white coats and the badges and stuff on. Those folks who do the floors and do the dusting and the cleaning, they are just as important as all of them. And so it takes the right mindset and the right management and the right focus in order for you to have a successful place. And we in Mississippi, I have to say, we have got to be part of that process of change, because it's so deeply entrenched that it's not going to happen overnight, but it's going to happen to us, the caregivers, who have to stand to the table and sit with these folks who are managing and running these facilities and say, look, we don't want to beat you up. We don't want to break you down. We don't want to sue you. We don't want to destroy you. We want you to work together to help you care for our loved ones. And we want to be a part of that process. And whatever we can do as primary caregivers to help you be successful, we want you to be successful. Because sometimes sometimes our loved ones get to the point to where we have to put them in these facilities. Yeah. This is the best place for them to have a quality of life, because we cannot care for them at home. So we need these facilities. But we need them to also create an environment of quality of life for our folk that we will want for ourselves. So anyway, I didn't mean to get on that rant, but I tell you.
I mean, I just think that you hit the nail on the head. Mm-hmm. I think that the director over the nursing centers moved so swiftly that even, a lot of people in administration didn't. He shut it down. I mean, and then put some policies in place that were so restrictive, mm-hmm. but was still compassionate to the families. Mm-hmm. Setting up a hotline, making sure that they had access, in ways that weren't physical. And I think that's the area in which I'm most proud, and know that I'm working for an organization that really puts patients first.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. And look, I think we're still going to stay on time at 2 minutes, even within my rant. But I want to remind you again, we've been talking with Miss Angie Juzang, and she is an incredible businesswoman and activist and business and economic developer on the Gulf Coast, and doing so many very things. So we want you to go to those websites that we discussed, and we'll share them also with the Facebook post after this. If you didn't connect those that information, we'll share her information with you. But check her out and check out the work that she do. I suggest you join the Legacy Business League. I know as soon as I get off this call, I'm going to become a member, because this is good information. So this is a great way for us to be able to connect with each other all over the state. And so thank you so much for joining us today. I want to remind you again, today at 5 to 6 p.m., Dear Sister, with the incredible Teresa Kennedy, and Judge Kamisha Mumford is hosting the Dear Sister podcast. They have a great, incredible Father's Day or Father celebration for conversation around some great entrepreneurs and business owners that are coming and having conversations with them today regarding what it takes to be a father, what it means to be a good father, and also to be fathers in our community. So they have a exciting conversation from 5 to 6 p.m. today, right here on this network and all of our radio networks, womenforprogressradio.com. Go there. And of course, Thursday evening at 5:30, we have the Women for Progress radio show, 5:30. Tune in with me and my host, Ms. Teresa Jones, and the great lineup and conversation we have there. And also, while you're listening to us, give us your comments or questions for our guests. We'll be glad to answer those questions for you. And next Wednesday, as I stated, the incredible Dr. Olga Osby with Pathways to Wealth and Wellness from 5:30 to 6:30 next Wednesday evening. She is incredible, and she has some wonderful guests lined up for her. But thank you so much for being part of this Working Woman Report today and supporting the work of Women for Progress. And thank you so much for tuning in and being with us. Ms. Jazang, we look forward to having a conversation again. Let's stay connected, keep in touch with each other. If there's anything I or Women for Progress can do for you and support your work, please reach out to us and we will answer the call. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much.
You have a wonderful week, audience, and we'll see you next week at the same time, Wednesday from 12 to 1 for the Working Woman Report. Thank you and have a great day.